Looking to transform your family game nights? At Perfectly Picked Games, we specialize in family games that bring everyone closer. Our games aren't just fun. Kids and teens will learn how to take turns, develop basic strategy skills, and understand the thrill of winning and grace of losing. With our exclusive gift of games, you can give months of gaming excitement to your family. Choose a 3-month or 6-month gift, and we'll deliver hand-picked family games to your doorstep every month. And here's the best part. Right now, you can use the promo code GOLDENMOJO and receive 20% off your selected plan. Don't miss out on this exclusive offer. Use promo code GOLDENMOJO and save 20% today at Perfectly Picked Games.
Welcome to the United States of Paranormal Podcast. Sit down and buckle up for an enlightening ride through everything cryptid, creepy, and paranormal.
Hello, all of my paranormal freaks out there. It is I, Golden J, hanging out with
the Rocker Chick
and
J-Dub.
And welcome to the United States of Paranormal. Today, we are joined by William and Vicky, who have, I'm excited to hear today's story because we've been kind of back and forth for a while now. William is his actual first name, but he likes to go by Pat or Patrick. So I'm going to start calling him Pat right now. So Pat, Vicky, welcome to the United States of Paranormal. We're so happy to have you, and we're glad you're able to make it tonight. And I know we have set this up, a couple months ago. I mean, we've been really, really busy. Due to the fact that J-Dub is actually more popular than Chicken McNuggets now. They're doing podcasts about her podcast. But that's how you found us, was through J-Dub's documentary, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I watched the documentary. It was just fascinating, and I thought it was a very authentic telling of an experience that's similar, I think, to what Vicky and I had growing up. So, yeah.
Well, I'm excited. We J-Dub got to work with Austin. Austin, I thought, did an amazing job with it. He's really, I think, really become a great filmmaker and documentary maker. And if you don't know, he's got a new one coming out. That's the Arkansas one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a link on our Facebook page for the trailer. And I think probably
that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. And by the time that this episode comes out, I think that that whole documentary will be released.
I think it comes out Saturday.
Comes out Saturday the 28th. Yeah, there you go. We'll figure out what the dates are. But yeah, so go over, check out the Ghost Files. If you haven't seen J-Dub's documentary, then apparently this is your first time listening to the show, because I think all of our listeners have watched it. Yeah, it's amazing. So Pat, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know that you're kind of from Missouri, and you're a Cardinals fan, as I picked up earlier before we started recording.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I live in this really tiny community. It's called Wesco. Nobody's ever heard of it, and unless you're from this immediate area, and even some people still haven't heard of it.
Right.
But there's only about 25 people that live here now, and I've lived here most of my life. I'm 47 years old. So I think I'm probably the 5th generation of my family to make their home in this little community. So, as far as what I do, I've had 2 main careers over the past 25 years. I've been in law enforcement most of that time, and I've spent 8 years working in the railroad industry also. So,
oh wow,
I worked for a private company for a few years, and then as a inspector for the state of Missouri for several years also. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. Married, got one grown child going to college right now. And yeah, so that's just a brief background. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How about you, Vicky?
Well, as I said, I'm quite a bit older than him, so I'm 66, unfortunately. But yeah, 66, and I have lived in the vicinity all my life as well. I live a little further into Stillville, which is considered town, and that's where I live. But I've worked for the Crawford County Court House in one capacity or another over the past, well, at least 37 years. And prior to that, which isn't even worth going back to, I worked in banking, and that was pretty much it. But I went to work at the courthouse back in 1989, and that's where I stayed until I retired. And I just retired 2 years ago. So, and I have two children. Of course, they're grown, and I have two grandchildren and one on the way.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that's
Congratulations.
exciting. Thank you. That's my son who's 45 and never had any children. Now he's going to have them. So it is rather exciting for us.
Very
Uh, yeah. But yeah, there's a big, difference, almost 20 years in Patrick and my ages. And it, we have grown up in the same home. The home's never really changed at all. And as I said, Patrick knows, he's just studied the kind of the history of Wesco more than me, but it's a very old community. And back in the day, back in the late 1800s or so, when people found a place by a spring and a river, that's where they took hold. And that's kind of what I think happened here at Wesco. And there it was once a thriving community back when. Big thriving community with what went on in small places like that. It had a mill and a church and a school. I'm not letting Patrick tell history, but yeah, it's kind of turned around here.
Fine.
But yeah, but it was just a much. It's what small communities were made of back then, and the population was bigger and obviously so forth. And I believe it was settled. And I think you would agree, Patrick, it was settled many, many years ago, back in the 1800s, because the Merrimack River run through there. And they were able to build a mill, and there was a fresh spring. And people, that's, a long time ago, that was extremely important.
Right.
So that's just kind of just my say on the property, because I can't help but think some of the things that we have experienced together, not together, but similar, could possibly be something from the many, many old days,
Right.
back when. That's possible. And I wasn't a real believer, until these things, they happened to me. And what's odd, Patrick, I don't know if you agree, but they happened to us when we were living at home. Not so much, I don't think so much has went on there now, but some things have happened there since, because my mother knew that I thought it was odd. And if something happened, she'd call me to say, my sweeper just started running. Yeah, something like that. But I don't know. Yeah, step in here, Patrick.
Well, so, just going back to a little bit about the history of
Right.
this place.
I got ahead of myself.
So, again, the town is called Wesco. There's almost nobody here, but it is kind of a popular place for people to buy up property, because it's on the Merrimack River, and the Merrimack River is it's an Ozark stream, and people from St. Louis or the St. Louis area will buy up property out here. So, there's still a few houses around here. There's a post office that's still in operation. It's probably the smallest post office in the United States, but it's still here. Like Vicky said, we had a church, a school, a one-room schoolhouse,
A store. Yeah,
a
the store.
couple of stores at different times. I've traced the history back as far as 1873, when we think the mill was built around that time, and then the railroad was built through here at that in 1873, and then two hotels were operated here, and one of the hotels is where our parents' house stands now. So there was this hotel. It's called the Vaughn Hotel, and it was a big wooden two-story structure. Not sure when it quit operating as a hotel. Probably, I would say, probably around the time of the Great Depression, and then it was turned into a private residence. So around, I'm going to say probably around 1960, it was torn down, and then the man who bought it or who owned it at the time had tore it down. He constructed our parents' place, which was just a little tiny. It's just a little tiny house, and it was actually, I think, a cabin. Um, he just used it for a cabin, and I'm not sure. Did mom and dad add on to it, Vicky?
No,
No.
no, it's just like it is when he had it. They never added on other than that back porch, and it has the original cellars were big things, especially in Missouri or anywhere where you needed to keep your fruit cellars or you were afraid of a tornado.
Right.
You had a cellar, and that cellar is still just steps within the back door, and it's there and it's used, and it's the only uh, piece of, I guess you would call, structure that's still there on the property that's original. Um, Across the road from the house, and the road wasn't there back in these days, but what we say across the road is the old store building that it was two-story, and the bottom floor was a store, and the top area was at that time used for extra hotel space. It was kind of a little hop off. There was a lot of work there. The telephone company way back in the day come through there and put lines in, and I know that the men stayed, at the hotel and whatnot. So both places, and then that hotel became a store later on, and when my parents bought the property, they ended up buying that store across the road, so it is original to the property as well.
Wow.
And so there's a couple of things there that, I mean, they're ancient, and but I don't think there was any foundation left of our house, Patrick, that it was all put in, but the house just basically it's got a basement or anything, but it sits on the same little knoll. I don't know why we didn't bring the picture, uh, but we have a picture of that old hotel sitting on this knoll, I call it, just a little hill where our parents' house is now setting, but very little has changed. Very, very little. So, um, but there were, I've heard it from my grandparents when it was a happening little town. There were dances every weekend, and it was a really old fashioned, what you might, see on TV about these little towns and places that had their music and their dances and uh, their entertainment, and uh, they took care of each other pretty much. And the closest town to them was about 13 miles away. And that just upgraded them a little bit if they had to go to town. Like,
Right.
to get, if somebody passed away, there was a coroner in the town, and somebody'd have to go after the coroner or whatever. But yeah, and really, when you drop this beautiful little place is in a valley in the Ozark Hills.
Mhm.
And you drop down in there, especially this time of year, and there's just a lot of serenity when you drop into there. You've got the green and the river, and you can hear that river. When I was a kid, I kept my bedroom window open a lot, and I could hear the the water rushing over a dam that was right across from the house. And it's very relaxing there to a point. But I just got to just say to this day at my age, um, because I am a little leery about stuff like this now. And I don't like to think that I'm staying in places where people have passed away. Um, and I know for a fact that the guy who bought the house, bought the property, and tore down the hotel and built his house, he died in the kitchen. In fact, I remember the ambulance pulled up there because we were living on some property of my grandparents up the road, and I watched them leave with him. Um, and so I just I never was unsettled as a kid there, but now that I look back and when I got older, I always wondered, and Patrick and I have seen things out the window. We've seen people out the window like they were coming. I said there was a dam there, like there were people coming, men coming up from the dam, and then they just vanish. And so, you know, I don't know. Most people wouldn't believe you if you said that. And I don't think anybody else but you or myself have seen that, have we, Patrick?
No,
These-
you know, mom and dad having lived there all their lives. I don't know if they never saw anything, or if they just, I know dad sometimes though would say, well, the fellow's name that lived there before, his last name was Beck. He would say, well, Mr. Beck did this last night. It was kind of a joke. Um, but an interesting thing about the house was when this hotel was torn down, this fella, Mr. Beck, repurposed some of the wood to construct the house.
Right.
from the
So
hotel, yeah.
yeah, from the hotel. So the original boards for the dad, bless him, he's been dead for a few years now, but when he got old and couldn't get around very well, he fell, and he fell through the wall, through the
Oh,
plaster or the drywall, and he he left a huge hole in the wall, and it exposed all this old lumber from the hotel that had been used in the construction of their house. Um, so going back that far to the hotel, I don't know is really who it was used as private residence for a while. Certainly after it closed down as a hotel or shut down. Um, I don't know, about who lived there and if anybody died there. But as Vicky pointed out, the person, Mr. Beck, who built this their house, he did pass away there. When was that, Vicky? Around 1964?
It was around that time. It was in
Yeah,
I would say mid to early 60s, right? Yeah,
1964, I think, is when
yeah.
he had a heart attack and died in the kitchen. So I don't know, Vicky, if you want to take it away
Yeah,
as far as
let me just, yeah, because I guess as a kid, I mean, and I do think there's something to maybe whatever this could be presenting itself to young people, okay?
hmm
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the older you are, nobody older hears this stuff. I don't know. But uh oh my goodness. Back in the 60s, we used to have, and early 70s, we had this, it was popular at the time, this vinyl furniture, faux leather. And uh, I woke up one night wide awake, and it was in the summer where people would wear shorts and so forth. And I heard it was just like a group of people in our living room, and I was just around the corner from it where my bedroom was. And it was just like I could hear all these people scooting their rear ends with their legs sticking, to
Mm-hmm.
the couch and that. And I mean, it was really real to me. And I even got my dad up, and he was just kind of put out with that. And I said, there is somebody in our living room. because I laid there and listened to it long enough that I felt like somebody was in there. And I got him up and, he went in there and he's like, there's nobody here, of course, thank God. But, and I had music boxes as a girl growing up, the kind that you would have to lift the lid and
Mhm.
the ballerina would spin around and play music. I had several of those. And through the night, they would start playing music. So most of them had the lid that you would have to open for that to happen. So
Right.
I started closing that lid before I'd go to bed. And I'd wake up and they were playing and the lid was open.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
yeah. And, at that moment, it didn't frighten me as much as it does, as much as it has since I've gotten older. Um, and since I've left home, and I mean, there's been weird, Patrick and I have both experienced these two men that we look at, we could see almost the Merrimack River from this window. And there's a railroad bed there where the railroad came out. So you have a hill where the railroad set on top of. And we have seen these men coming up over this hill from the river and across the old railroad bed, like they're coming to our house, maybe for some help. And just waiting for somebody to knock on our door, and nobody ever did. And we have seen those people, both of us, at separate times, which I didn't know he'd seen them or he didn't know I had, and then he saw them. And it's got to. I feel more like if there's something there, it's something more attached to just to Wesco itself, rather than maybe the man that passed away. Um, and now that my dad is gone, because we were up there a lot when my dad was alive, but since he's gone, my mom's still there. I just don't go up there a lot, and I haven't heard of a lot of anything happening. But it seems like after my dad passed away, things have kind of calmed down. Um, but my mother, when before my dad died, she experienced things that she just laughed about it, like shelves falling in the kitchen and dishes falling in the floor, her vacuum turning on by itself. Um, And she even called me about that vacuum one night to tell me because she thought I'd find that amusing, and I did for sure. And you know, uh, very just things that cannot it just cannot be explained, and they shouldn't have happened. So yeah, Patrick.
Do you feel, I mean, looking back on that now, do you feel like maybe that's a residual energy of the workers, like say on the railroad who were coming to the hotel, and that's kind of the path they were taking? Is that, I mean,
I
like I
believe
said,
it.
looking back, yeah,
Mhm, mhm. I believe that it could be more because I always felt for the longest time it was this man that died in the house, the man that built it. And then as time went on, and we seen these guys coming up from over the railroad, the old railroad, uh, whether they were fishermen there, a lot of fishermen back in the day there,
right,
um, whether they were there doing that or work, coming to the hotel to to close their day.
right,
Maybe, but I feel more like it is something more like that than it is the man that passed away there. That's what I'm thinking. And if there was anything there, I feel like maybe my dad just shoved that away if it was in the house. You know what I'm
right.
saying?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. But I know that I'm 66 years old, but I still get no pleasure out of going up there and spending the night. I don't want to. I
I
don't.
mean, I can understand that for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't spend the night in my old house if you
I,
paid me $1 million.
Well,
Wait,
there's
a
nothing there
million?
that's ever hurt me, but it has certainly scared me. And it's not at that moment. It's after I leave and I look back on it and I think, golly, that's really strange. And my mom's getting up there and she'd like to see me and my husband take that house when she passes away.
Right,
And I'm like, no, how do you be kind and say, no, I don't want to be here, but I don't. And, no, I wouldn't feel comfortable there. And I don't even think I would feel comfortable there if you were to take that house down and rebuild. I,
right.
yeah, that's how I feel about it. So,
And you lived there your whole teenage life till
yes,
you're
yes.
gotcha.
I lived there from the time I was about 5 years old until 20. And yeah, so even though that's when I say it's kind of contradicting myself here, or contradicting, but if when I say I'm going home, that is Wesco to me. And going into that serene valley, I love the where we were by the river. I mean, that was just a kid's dream. Um, to be there where we grew up, and nobody we rode motorcycles and so forth. We didn't have the highway patrol after us. But that probably wouldn't happen today. But it was a great place for that. We'd gather at the river, the kids that would come out there on the weekends, and that was good. But um, that was home. And when I go into the valley, that's what I feel. But I don't feel that comfort when I go in that house.
Right. I understand that.
Yeah.
Especially looking back at all the things that had
Mhm.
happened, and you just get that sinking feeling, like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a place. I mean, there was some really good laughter going on there
oh
at the
yeah,
time years ago and whatnot, and there was fun. But to think about, no, I don't want to. I don't want to live there. I don't. I want to, and I don't. Mom will ask me because she's alone. She wants me to spend the night, and I say I don't want to, and it's silly, but not to me. It isn't.
right.
It's just so I don't. Yeah. No, my Patrick's son, Austin, spends the night there a lot with her because she's lonely.
Right.
And I don't know that he's ever reported one thing, right?
No, he's never, yeah, he's never said anything about anything happening there recently, or him experiencing anything at all. But my experiences all happened during the '90s, and specifically, really, I can just think of 2 different years whenever I saw anything or experienced anything. But it was, I guess, to me at least, it was fairly dramatic. Um, so I graduated in 1996. So that year, that summer, and I was 18 years old. And and one of my friends, we were hanging out by the old store. Now, Vicky mentioned there's
Yeah.
this old store that they own, which is vacant now, but used for storing personal property. And we were just hanging out by that old store. As you can see, my parents' house is only, what, 50, 60 feet away. I mean, it's very close.
Yeah.
And this is it was a hazy, just summer afternoon, and mom and dad were gone. I don't know where they went, but they weren't at home. And to the west of their house, as Vicky mentioned, there's the Merrimack River, and there's this old abandoned railroad bed. And the railroad bed it's between their house and the river. So people in the summer would come out there, and a lot of times their they would park their vehicles on that railroad bed, and they would take a float trip down. So they would have a vehicle there parked near the river that they could take their boat out, carry it up over the railroad bed, and load up their boat and go. So anyway, this evening we're hanging out there, and there's a pickup truck parked on the railroad bed, and I don't know, probably 7 o'clock in the evening, there were 3 guys that came up. We watched them. There were 3 guys that came up over the railroad bed, and 2 of them were carrying a canoe. And they loaded the canoe. These 2 men loaded the canoe, but there were 3. Like I said, there were 3 that we saw walk up. Well, 2 of them loaded the canoe into the truck, while the third one walked up to the front door of mom and dad's house. And the 2 who had the canoe, they got in the truck and they drove off. So the third one, he'd walked up on the opposite side of the house from where we were at, which is where the front door is. And I told my buddy, I said, he must need to use the phone or something. This is back in the '90s. This is before cell phones.
Right.
We don't get any service down here anyway. So, I thought, well, he needs to use the phone. And so I told my friend that, and I was like, I'm going to go over and try to help him. And I walked over, and he was gone. And he just, there was no sign of him whatsoever. And he was dressed a little differently than the other ones. He was wearing long khaki pants and a white shirt. And
That's what I saw. Yeah.
the other guys were wearing, cut off jeans, shorts, jorts.
Yes, something you'd be floating in, something you'd be canoeing in, yeah.
And this guy,
Mm-hmm.
He dressed comparatively nice, I guess you could say. And so we have one house behind our house, but there was nobody there. It was a summer house, but there was nobody out at that particular time. And this guy, he was just gone. And so I just have this theory about the former owner of the property, the one who did die there. He owned riverfront property on the opposite side of that railroad bed. And he had a couple of cabins down there on the riverfront, and he was very, very, very protective of that property.
Right.
And to the point that he would chase people off the riverfront. If somebody came down there and they were trespassing, he was on it, and he would run them off. And him and my grandpa, they clashed one time over where my grandpa's boats were tied up. And so he was just very, very protective over that riverfront. And I just wonder, I just wonder.
I've heard it, but you think it could be Beck?
I
Maybe?
theorized that was him that walked up. I mean, I don't know. But
did you?
It's like he was chasing him off his property.
Very well, because he had that reputation.
Yeah, he did. He had
for sure.
He had a reputation of just being, well,
like you said, he was just very.
He would. Nowadays everybody around here in Missouri open carries a firearm, but he was open carrying. He would carry a revolver on his hip, and if somebody was on his property, like, hey, you better leave.
Yeah, that was back in the 60s.
Yeah, those were the stories that I was told growing up by my grandpa and my dad about his protectiveness over the property that he owned. So was that him down there trying to interact with these two guys who were floating?
This is the one thing that we both did see different times. Told each other, I saw somebody come up from the river, this man wearing khaki pants and a white shirt. And he's like, oh my gosh, because I'd seen that, So that was probably the first time we linked in to having the same experience.
Right.
Because you've had your own experience, though, inside the house.
Well, I did. And it's a little bit embarrassing to talk about, because I know I went to work the next day and told this story, and I got laughed at. But this would have been in 1998, so I'd have been 20 years old at the time.
And he's the most serious person I know, so I know he's not joking.
Well,
for real.
No, I mean it was very real, and I went to bed and had just laid down and I think was drifting off to sleep, and I felt myself rising out of that bed, and I remember this very distinctly.
Gives me chills.
Mom and Dad's the ceiling in my bedroom, or in the all throughout their whole house, had a oh gosh, what do you call it? It's a tile.
It almost looks like asbestos tiles. I don't know, with little bitty holes in it.
Like a drop ceiling.
Well, not not dropped. It was right flush level with the wall,
Right, right.
the ceiling. But it had some sort of, and it was popular, I guess, back then, because again, nothing's been changed. Some kind of ceiling that was on. It was kind of looked like maybe what 10-inch squares
Yeah, it's
that
like
Mm,
just
10-inch
it,
squares. It's
yeah,
got
and
these little zigzaggy designs in it.
yeah, and
And
yeah.
little like pencil holes all in it,
yeah,
and that was just part of the design. I don't know what you call it.
A,
it
a lot of the buildings downtown Warsaw, if you go in, a lot of them put in the drop ceiling so you can't see it, but most of those vaulted ceilings, the 10-12 foot ceilings have a lot of those 10 by 10
right.
squares that are attached up there. They're kind of flowery,
Yeah,
they have kind of
yeah.
different things like that. So I'm assuming that's kind of close to what you're talking
It's
It's
about.
got
kind of like that, and then we know that they had like a paper almost texture to the outside, because if anything stuck to them, and you tried to pull that off, and it would tear off part of that
Oh,
tile a little bit,
Right
just the
on.
decorative part.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So it's got these zigzaggy patterns in it. It's like a plaster material, I guess. But like Vicky said, they're like 10-inch squares. But I mean, I remember that ceiling, and I just kept getting closer and closer and closer to it. And I honestly, I mean, I thought I was dead. I thought I'd died, and I thought I was being pulled
Right.
up, and that ceiling just kept getting closer and closer and closer, and I mean, it got to the point where my nose was almost touching it, and I was trying to scream, and I couldn't get anything out. I was just gasping, and
Right.
then as right to the point where I felt like I was going to touch the ceiling, then I was lowered back down, and when I laid back down and my head laid on the pillow, that pillow felt like a cinder block. I don't know. It was just the weirdest experience that I've ever had in my life. It just felt
hmm.
like that bed was just as hard as stone, and the pillow was hard as stone, and
and this is the same bedroom that I had. We had the same bedrooms, but I never experienced levitation, but I experienced weird stuff in that room. So,
yeah,
you know,
I and then it was that same year. That was 1998. Um, and I can't remember if this was before or afterward, but I was laying in bed. Just had went to sleep, and I felt somebody pushing on my feet, and I felt that repeatedly. It felt like somebody had grabbed my feet and were pushing down, just straight down it into the bed, and that went on for several minutes, and then I think I got up finally, and left the room for a while, and um, yeah, I mean those, and I lived there for another 2 years until I met my wife, and then we I got married and moved out. But those were the only experiences that I had there. But they, again, the first one happened in 1996. Was seeing at least what I believe was was a spirit.
Right.
Um, and then the other two incidents in my room happening in 1998, and there was that nothing that happened that I can recall before or since then. Now my
well, my
parents,
experience in comparison, I'm sorry, but in comparison to the years you're talking about, the things that I experienced in there, like the music boxes and the furniture, that would have been in the early to mid, more like the early 70s. So it continued, but it did not continue for anyone else that we know of, but just the two of us.
Right.
yeah, in the 80s, mom and dad and I, because I would have been pretty young at that time. Dad was a heavy equipment operator in St. Louis, so um, Mom and Dad rented a place in St. Louis or close to St. Louis County, but they rented a place in St. Louis County from 1980 to 1990. So they kept their home out here. And when I say out here, I'm living in Wesco now.
Right.
But they kept their home out here, and they rented a place in St. Louis so Mom could be with Dad, we could be with Dad during the week.
Right.
But yeah, it was just really bizarre that what I experienced just happened within just a couple of years of each other during the time that I was 18 to 20 years old, and then of course Vicky's experience is happening 25 years earlier than
Yeah,
that.
and I was probably between probably 12 and 18 when all that happened.
Hmm.
Then, yeah. So uh, again, I just it never bothered me at that moment to go home. Where else was I going to go?
Right.
Right.
It's I got to go home. But looking back on it out now, and I see so many things on TV that refers to things like this happening. And if I hadn't known what had happened to the both of us, I wouldn't believe it to this day that it's really real. But I do believe. And I believe that it's just my belief due to the old community there and its significance to the water. And even possibly back, I must think because it was in a valley with a spring, and the river, actually the Merrimack River does run all the way into eventually the Mississippi. So it's a major contributory. And I'd say that probably the Native Americans would have taken up back in those days there.
Right.
That was the perfect place to be. So there's a lot of things there that could bring that on. And I think that it's very possible that that's what it is. But nobody else that I know that lives around there you had an experience at your home, which just sits at just a few feet away from my parents' home. But I don't know that anything else has ever happened around there. But when you must talk about when you moved into your house, how
Oh,
you heard the train,
yeah,
and
so
this is true.
yeah, so I may never get another job in the railroad industry again after telling the story. I don't know, but so the railroad was abandoned in 1984, and the tracks were removed in '85. But our grandpa had worked for the railroad, for that same railroad line, and
And it was a major deal. I mean,
yeah,
it brought
Right.
a lot of people in and out. Yeah.
and he worked very hard. I mean, this was back when they worked with hand tools, but that's where my interest in railroading began, was when I was, I mean, just a 3-4 years old. The train was still coming through there um, once or twice a week, and it was just going really slow because it was a branch line. It was it was just it wasn't a much of a going concern in the early '80s, but um, Grandpa, when the train would come through, Grandpa or Dad, somebody would hold me up to the window or take me outside so I could wave to the train whenever it went by. And so when my wife and I and our son moved back in here in 2018, when we moved back to the town, um, it was our it was our first day. Well, I guess it was our second day because we were unpacking things, and we heard it, and we heard the train. I mean, just as plain as day. And a train horn has a specific sequence when it's approaching a crossing. Well, there was one public crossing here in Wesco, and a train has a sequence where it will blow the horn 2 long blasts then one short blast, and then another continuous blast as it's going over the crossing. And that's what we heard. And my wife, she looks over
Who
at
would
me,
be the biggest skeptic
and
too.
my wife has no interest in, I mean, she's just whatever. But
Yeah,
she looks over at
she
me and
has.
she
Yeah,
says, "You hear a train?" And I said, "Yeah, I heard that." And I mean, it sounded just like it did when I was approaching and for this crossing here in town. And it wasn't a whistle. It was a diesel horn. I mean, I've heard it thousands of times, and it was a diesel horn. And nobody, to my knowledge, was well. There was one collision that occurred there, but nobody was killed. 'Cause I have no knowledge of anybody being killed at that crossing, and
Right.
certainly not killed during the time that they were using diesel locomotives. Um, Maybe something happened during the old steam days, but
but why would you? Why would you two hear it? And nobody else.
well,
That's
yeah, and it was really it's another one of those things that is it is it something to do with the town more than a specific event? Is there something about the town or the location rather than uh, a specific occurrence? And
yeah.
Right.
we just don't
Well,
know.
I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think you nailed it because if we're thinking right, and like Vicky said, with the Native American population, and probably in long before the town was settled, is there burial grounds around there that were ever found or anything like that? I mean, even if there haven't been found, is there some there somewhere that never have been found? And does that energy still create that? And how long did that train system run through there? I mean, how many years? About what, 3, 4 decades?
More than
It was
that.
18
Yeah.
1873 to 1984. So
Right on.
111 years.
100. Yeah. So, I mean, it could be that maybe nothing tragic happened. Maybe nothing tragic happened in that space. Maybe that particular train had a tragedy 100, 200 miles away from there. And that's just the path that residual energy is still traveling due to the fact of the Native American energy, because a lot of the stuff that we have talked about that deal with that, I mean, that energy is strong.
Yeah.
From back then. So it's just a theory, obviously.
Well,
I
and I do know there were several fatalities that did occur on that railroad during its operation, and especially in its early days. And they were very close to the town. They were within a mile to a mile and a half.
right,
They didn't occur in the town, to my
right,
knowledge. There was nothing that occurred in the town, but there was in 1875 there was a bridge that collapsed under a train, and that killed the locomotive engineer and the fireman. And then in 1880 there was a brakeman. So brakemen back in those days used to have to run on the tops of the cars and put the brakes on. They didn't have
right.
automatic air brakes, so each car had its own independent brake, which they still have hand brakes, but that was the only way to apply the brakes to a car. So he was on the cars and riding on top of the train and hit a bridge, and it
Oh,
knocked him off of the train into the creek, and of course killed him. Um, so there were things that definitely happened on that railroad. Just is it tied into anything that that
Well,
we've seen or
here
experienced? I don't know.
here's something that I wonder about. I don't speak about it, but why is it just that you and myself is there do we have some sort of extra sensory something to this? I don't know.
I don't know. I did
Well,
have.
I think you said your dad would say, well, Mr. Beck is at it again. I think some people, as they get older, play it off as, it's nothing. So there might have been things going on with your dad, but he just played it off as, oh, it was
Oh yeah,
nothing.
Right.
And your mom said that she had things happen. So
Yeah.
and she has enough that she knew I was intrigued by it, although it would have been best if I hadn't have known. But she would call me and say, "This happened. Can you believe it?" But it didn't bother her. But it bothered me, so I'm even more reluctant to be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
But why? I don't think anything within the past. Then our father passed away there 4 years ago. So I haven't experienced anything, or my mother, as far as I know, at all in the past 5 years or more.
But you
Yeah.
still don't feel very comfortable when you walk in the door.
Um, Not really, but this is odd because I do have this funny thing about, I guess, death and people that have died in places. And my dad passed away in a hospital bed in our living room there. I find more of a comfort now when I go into that home. I do. I feel that, I'm more, I guess I just don't think about those things that happened as much. It's just, I don't know. Is it all in my mind? Maybe, but it's just like whatever. It always seemed to be benevolent, but whatever it might have been, I think he's just shooed it away.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe he's when he passed away, he actually created that wall to kind of keep that
Yeah.
keep all that at bay, or took it with him. It's like, nope, we're done.
Yeah.
You're done messing around in this house. Let's go. And we're all going together. Let's go. I mean,
Because he knew that it frightened me. He knew
right.
that. So
Yeah. So, Patrick, did you ever get a chance to compare the khaki and white t-shirt guy with a picture of Mr. Beck? Was there ever a picture of Mr. Beck around where you could compare him?
I have never seen a picture of him. It's weird. Or, if weird's the right term, but his son stopped there and visited
yeah,
with my mom and dad about 5 years ago. And I think that was the first time he had been back to this place in
40 years.
probably
Right on.
40 years. But he stopped
Yeah.
there and he's a really nice guy, and almost wanted to talk to him about this, but I of course I did. Now it'd just be a kind of uncomfortable thing to talk about.
Right.
But,
Yeah, we think your dad's in our house.
yeah,
He's been left behind.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I never did. I never did see it. I never did see a picture of him. He
I
was
never
just,
either.
but of the three people that I saw come up from the river that day, there was one that was certainly he just seemed out of place.
Right.
And I mean he didn't look like a guy who'd spent his whole day fishing on the river in a boat.
Yeah.
He didn't look like a guy who'd been floating that day. But can I say that was him? Certainly not.
Right.
Certainly not. I just don't
But
know.
there's something there. I believe it. I still believe it, even with maybe it's not the house anymore. But I believe there's something in that small community that just a few of us may be sensitive to.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you grew up in it. Both of you grew up in it. So, I mean, you've got that connection to it. And I think that makes a big difference, along the way. I think the train whistle thing is the coolest damn thing I've heard in a long time. That would be pretty freaky, but I would love to. I'd be loving that.
It was a few months ago. That my son, he came downstairs and he said he said, "Dad, did you hear a train?" And I didn't hear anything.
Right.
And he said that he heard a train horn, and
Hmm.
it's the
I
same.
have to interject that he's 19, so
Yeah,
he's not a little kid playing with the train.
yeah. He has no interest in the paranormal. He's the driest, dullest kid you could possibly be around. I say that I say that lovingly. He's majoring in aerospace engineering,
Oh,
and
wow.
he's a smart, very grounded kid. But yeah, he came downstairs. This was, I don't know, probably 2 months ago, and he told me that he heard a train, and
And
like,
it's just not possible.
and again,
Right.
There's no
I
there's
yeah,
no line that runs anywhere near there.
no, the nearest active railroad is about 20 miles away.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a it's a really neat place that a lot of people. I say a lot, and I'm talking maybe when I say a lot, maybe 100 people or so that lived here, worked with her hands to farm, to cut timber. They cut
They
rail.
and they well they've run the mill,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
there was the store, and it was a community of people that enjoyed each other's company and helped each other out. There was several, again, it was just like being in a city these days.
Right.
That's what it would have been like. So
Yeah.
um, that's all cool and fine. I know my husband said it would be so great if we had somebody, to check this out, like, you know, uh, those ghost hunter people or
Right.
whatever,
Right.
to find out what maybe it possibly is, although you might never know. But again, it has made a believer out of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Well, I do want to let all of our listeners know that this is like Patrick and Vicky's first time really telling anybody that's not immediately close to them. I know that you said you told Patrick, you said told people about the levitation thing at work, but you in your email you're like, I never told anybody these stories. So
right.
we're thrilled that you reached out and that you were able to tell us about it, because we love this stuff. Absolutely. And what I'm going to do though is later, after we're all done tonight, I'm going to sneak on my computer and I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to try to find Google Maps and go. I want to see your
Yeah.
guys' town
Yeah.
because it sounds amazing. This little bitty, in the middle of nowhere, the serenity and the quiet and wow, yeah, it sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does.
Mhm.
It does.
Yeah.
And it really is truly. If I could build a house there on a separate piece of property, I might, if I weren't at my age, because one thing out. One thing's for sure is if you live in Wesco, you're going to have problems getting out of there in the winter because it's way down. It's way down a hill, and any way out is you have to go up a hill somewhere, and so you can be stuck. And I don't want to be stuck there, getting older.
Sounds
Uh,
like a good reason to call into work.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, like I said, it's one of the prettiest places you can drop into, especially in the spring and summer. Beautiful place with the water going through and just the serenity of the peace there.
Ah.
Yeah, it is.
It does sound amazing. It does sound amazing. Well, I need to wrap this up, and I'm so super appreciative of you guys being able to come on and for reaching out and being on the United States Paranormal. And we hope that you'll keep in contact with us and let us know if anything crazy happens. Well, anything more happens, and keep us up to date.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks for having us
Thank you.
on and allowing us
Right.
to share these stories. Yeah, it's something we haven't really discussed with anybody outside of ourselves. So
Right.
No,
yeah, we
because
appreciate that.
most people would think that we were crazy, and we still live in a small community. So, we just have to be careful that they don't tap us in as, those weird people.
But
So,
that, maybe some of your neighbors or some of the kids you guys went to school with might have had the same things going on and they felt
exactly.
the
Sure.
same way.
Sure.
So
Right,
Yeah.
right.
just never know.
Yeah. Well, thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. And as always, you can go check out the United States of Paranormal.com for all of our merch. If you're watching on Patreon, J-Dub is wearing a Great White Bald Beaver t-shirt. And of course, I went retro tonight. I got some Daltober going on, from past Halloween. So also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/TUSOP. Go join and give us some love. We need it. We need the love. Patrick, Vicky, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
guys.
Yep.
All right, guys, we're out. Remember, keep it spooky, and I'll see you on the other side.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the United States of Paranormal podcast. Check us out at theunitedstatesofparanormal.com, where you can find our Spotlight of the Month, Fan of the Month, and all of our amazing merchandise. Or you can find us on social media at Facebook at the United States of Paranormal, Instagram at the United States of Paranormal, and YouTube at the United States of Paranormal 1795. And don't forget, we are now on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/TUSOP.
Please check out the other podcasts in the Golden Mojo Entertainment Network of podcasts. Golden 80s, Indiana Chiefs Fans, Gridiron Kings, Murd Nerds, The Nostalgia Tug, Real Terror, and the Puck Yeah podcast. But you can still find Golden Image Podcast, A Quart of Books and Booze, and The Call Guys, wherever you stream your favorite podcasts.
And if you have a location or a story that you would like for us to check into, please email us at the United States of Paranormal at gmail.com. Please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you for all of your support. Bye.